Okay, so now we're going to get into some word problems as they relate to geometry, and let's get into some facts that will help solve all these problems. First, the perimeter is the distance around an object. Next, the rectangle has two pairs of opposite sides and they are congruent. Congruent is a fancy math word for they are equal. Congruent is technically a word applied to shapes, and equals is a phrase applied to numbers. It's kind of like the term um, create and beget. When you beget something, you can't, like as a fly tire, I can't beget a fly. Okay, when you beget something, you create something that's exactly the same as yourself. But when you create, you can create anything. You can create a barn, you can create a house, you can create music, and yet you're a person. Okay, so that's why we use the term congruent, because we're talking about sides and those are shapes that are equal. So whenever you use the word congruent, it's always about shapes. The three angles of a triangle add up to 180 degrees. Complementary are two angles that add up to 90. Supplementary are two angles that add up to 180. And sometimes students have a little bit of a difficulty remembering which term is associated with which number. Complementary, C comes before S in the alphabet. 90 comes before 180 in the number line. So complementary adds up to 90. Supplementary adds up to 180. Next up, an isosceles triangle has two equal sides and two equal angles. They're referred to as the base angles. Okay, so let's apply that to some problems. Here's a perimeter word problem. The length of a rectangle is 3 less than 7 times the width. If the perimeter of the rectangle is 74, find the length and width, the area. So we're going to have two problems to do here, and I'm going to walk you through the first problem and then you will do the second, and the same thing for the triangle questions which follow. Okay, all right, so anytime I'm doing any kind of a problem that involves geometry, I like to draw a picture. I want to see what it is I'm talking about, and I like to label parts of that picture. Namely, I don't know what the width is, so I call that W, and then I write an expression, that work we did earlier in the year, for the length in terms of the width. And the length is 3 less than. Less than always means first shall be last shall be first. So the 3 has to go at the end. 7 times the width, that has to go in the beginning. So an expression for 3 less than 7 times the width is 7W minus 3. And then it says the perimeter is 74. Find. Now look, if the perimeter is 74, that means if you add up all of the sides, you get 74. Now in this diagram, I've only shown you two sides, but there's another W over here, and there's another 7W minus 3 on the bottom. That's that stuff about rectangles having opposite congruent sides. So here's my equation. The first side, W, plus the top side there, 7W minus 3, plus now this other W is the side on the right, and this other 7W minus 3 is the side on the bottom. If I add up all four of those sides, I have to get the perimeter, which is 74. So I look at this and I should realize right away that we have a same side, same operation situation. So if I get all my W's together, that's 1 W, and 7 more make 8 W's, and another one makes 9 W's, and 7 more makes 16 W's. And then I have a -3 and a -3, which altogether is -6, and we know that equals 74. Adding 6 to both sides, I didn't bother writing that step, but I think you can follow. 16W is 80. Then again, I didn't bother writing it, but I think you can follow. Dividing by 16, 80 divided by 16 is 5. So the width is 5. To find the length, I substitute that 5 right in here next to the 7, so that means 7 times 5. 7 times 5 is 35, minus 3 is 32. So that's how I get that the width is 5 and the length is 32. As far as finding the area goes, area of a rectangle is just length times width. 5 times 32 is 160. Okay, so that's a perimeter word problem. Pretty straightforward. We did them in the test, so these are not new. That's a little refresher. Let's see you try this one. Go ahead. Little stop and start time here. Okay, so here's my rectangle, and it says that the length is 5 more than 3 times the width, so I add this time. Still last shall be first, first shall be last. W is width, and the length is 3w, 3 times the width, plus 5, more than. Okay, correct equation. Here's my left side w, my top w, my right side w, my bottom w. Add them all up, I get 50. 1w, 3 w's is 4 w's, another one's 5 w's, another 3 of them are 8 w's. 5 and 5 are positive 10, equals 50. Subtracting the 10, I get 8w is 40. Dividing by the 8, and I get w is 5. So the width is 5, and the length, I have to plug in the 5. 3 times 5 is 15, plus 5 more is 20. So the length works out to be 20. What's the area? Area is length times width, and that's 100. Okay? All right. Little geometry application thing going on here. We said the three angles of a triangle always add up to 180. I will give you some leadership on this question. You'll get to handle the next one on your own. One angle of a triangle is 3 times another. The measure of the third angle is 10 more than the smallest angle. Find the angles. Said before, always like a diagram to start. So here's my starting angle up here. It's n. The other angle is 3 times as big, so that's 3n. And this last angle, it says, is 10 more than the smaller angle. Clearly, 1n is less than 3n's, so that's n plus 10. Okay, I got to make them equal to 180. So if I add them up, here is my top angle. Here's that angle on the left, 3n, and the angle on the right is n plus 10. Add them all up, get 180. This is clearly a same side, same operation situation. 1n and 3n make 4n, and another n is 5n. Plus 10 is 180. Subtracting 10 from both sides, 5n is 170. Dividing by 5, n is 34. Now, it wants the angle, so I got to get all 3 of them. So the first one's 34 because it's just n. The next one is 3n, that means 3 times 34, which is 102. And the last one is 34 plus 10 is 44. Now, one of the things I really love about math as a whole, like if you're sitting in your science class, or better yet, your history class, and you want to discuss anything from the causes for World War II to what was really going on with the Civil War, to anything else that you might want to discuss, well, you can have some very intelligent people come up with some very different answers in your discussion. But in mathematics, that's not the case. In mathematics, you arrive at a single conclusion. Now, you may get there from different perspectives, but it is irrefutable that the first angle of 34, the next angle, 3 times 34 is 102. The last angle, 34 plus 10 is 44. The reason that's irrefutable is because if I add up 34, 102, and 44, I get 180. And the three angles of a triangle must add up to 180 in the Euclidean system. So therefore, we have 180 degrees made up of those three angles. I am certain that I am right. There is no arguing the point. So in politics, you could have an argument between a liberal and a conservative, a Republican and a Democrat. You can read a book and different people can feel different ways about how good that book was. But in mathematics, at the end of the day, it is proven. There's nothing you can argue with there. Okay. So the next type of question I want to talk about is complementary. And we said before, complementary means adds up to 90. It says the measure of an angle is twice the measure of its complement. What's the angle's measure? Again, this is the teaching part. You'll do one on your own in just a couple of minutes. So I'll let the first angle be n, and the second angle is twice as big. So the second angle is 2n. Okay, so two angles are n and 2n. Now complementary, pretty straightforward. They just add up to 90. 1n plus 2n is 90. These equations tend to be pretty easy to solve. Same side, same operation. 3n is 90. Dividing by 3, and I get n is 30. Now that means the first angle is 30, but there's the angle that's n, and then there's an angle that's 2n. So 2 times 30 is 60. In this case, it says, what's the angle's measure? It wants the angle that's twice the measure, so that's 60. Okay? All right, your turn. Little stop and start moment. Go ahead. All right, so always draw a diagram. This time the angles are twice another, which is 2n, and 20 more than the smallest, which is n plus 20. Find the angles. Well, all three of them have to add up to 180. There's my first angle at the top, my second angle on the left, bottom, third angle, bottom right. They add up to 180 degrees. Same side, same operation here. So 4n plus 20 is 180. Subtracting 20 from both sides, 4n is 160. Dividing by 4, n is 40. And that's the correct solution. But it doesn't ask me that. It says find the measures of the angles. So the first one's 40. The next one's 2 times 40 or 80. And the last one's 40 plus 20 or 60. And again, the fact that I can know that I am correct. 40 and 80 and 60 do add up to 180. Okay. Last part here, what we have is the measure of an angle is 4 times, it should say 4 times, 4 times the measure of its complement. What's the angle's measure? So you have one angle and then you have another one which is 4 times as big. Well, I don't know if you did this before or not. So if you didn't finish it yet, then we'll stop and start. If you did, I'll keep talking. The two angles are going to be n and 4n. If I add them up, n plus 4n is 90. Same side, same operation. 5n is 90. Dividing by 5, and I get n is 18. So the two angles are 18, and then 4 times 18, which is 72. The bigger angle is 72. All right, so there's some geometry applications for today. Next thing, just a quick little bit of review. What is the percent proportion? Percent over 100 equals part over whole, and the word is generally indicates the part. The word of generally indicates the whole. If the probability of rain is 15%, what is the probability of no rain? Remember, you got to add up to 100%. So the no rain is 85%. And now we get into just some geometry things, and I'll just mention them verbally. Perimeter is the blank around an object, distance. A rectangle has 2 pairs of opposite, you could say 2 different answers here. Congruent or equal sides. What are the 3 angles of a triangle always add up to? 180 degrees. I feel like count upon count. Complementary. 2 angles that add up to 90. Very good. Supplementary. 2 angles that add up to 180. Very good. An isosceles triangle has 2 equal, and in either order, sides and 2 equal angles. It could say equal sides then angles. All right, so there's a review of what we've been doing, and the next lesson we have will be very similar to this one. We'll also have a quiz at the end of the next lesson, which will focus on the kinds of questions that were covered this week. A little bit of the old stuff, but mostly the material covered this week. Have a fantastic rest of the day, and don't forget to do your homework.